I want you to imagine, just for a second, that you are standing in the middle of this completely hyper-modern metropolis.
Oh, sure. Lots of glass and steel.
Right, exactly. Towering glass, skyscrapers everywhere, the streets are totally spotless, and above you, the sky is just crisscrossed by these world-class delivery drones.
It sounds incredibly futuristic.
It really does. You've got cafes packed with, young founders pitching hardware startups. It's a megacity where 15 million people are using some of the most advanced urban infrastructure on the planet.
And if you just looked at that scene, you'd think, you would naturally assume it's a city that's been building its empire for centuries.
Which is exactly the paradox we are looking at today. Because, historically speaking, this city essentially did not exist when a lot of the people listening to this deep dive right now were born.
It's a crazy timeline.
It is. We are taking a deep dive into Shenzhen, China today. And our source material for this is actually brilliant because it's a little deceptive at first glance.
Yeah, it's not your typical academic paper.
Yeah. No, not at all. We're actually pulling from a conversational travel and language guide. On the surface, it's just designed to help English learners navigate a trip. But when you really start reading between the lines, unpacking the locations and the vocabulary, it highlights...
It reveals so much more.
Exactly. It reveals this incredible blueprint of the fastest growing urban center in human history.
Well, a language guide is fundamentally just a tool for survival, right? It doesn't have time for fluff.
Right, it has to be practical.
Exactly. It has to distill a location down to its absolute most essential characteristics. And the vocabulary you need to navigate Shenzhen terms focused on rapid prototyping, massive demographic shifts, just relentless speed. It tells this fascinating story of how you build a megacity from scratch.
Okay, let's unpack this, because I just love when we can take a seemingly simple artifact, like a literal travel guide, and reverse engineer the massive geopolitical forces that shaped it.
It's a great way to look at it.
So, to even begin to understand the high-tech hub Shenzhen is today, we really have to grasp the timeline of its very existence. The guide points out that tourists invariably end up at the Shenzhen History Museum.
Oh, yeah, that museum is essential.
Right. And what you see there completely shatters the normal urban development model. Just 40 years ago, Shenzhen was, it was a small fishing village.
And we really need to be precise about that, because it wasn't, a mid-sized trading port that just got a nice economic boost.
Right, it wasn't like a small city getting bigger.
No, it was literally a network of rural villages and mudflats.
Yeah.
We're talking about a population of roughly 30,000 people.
Wow, 30,000.
Yeah, and today, it is a megacity of 15 million.
Which is just, it's mathematically absurd. You don't go from 30,000 to 15 million in 4 decades through organic population growth.
You definitely don't. That kind of growth is entirely engineered.
Yeah.
It was the result of this massive, unprecedented policy experiment. Back in 1980, Shenzhen was designated as China's first special economic zone.
Basically a sandbox, right?
Exactly. It was a designated area where foreign investment, market capitalism, and private enterprise were allowed to just operate freely in a country that was still heavily restricted at the time.
So they essentially just drew a circle on a map right next to Hong Kong and said, hey, let's see what happens if we remove the friction.
That's pretty much it.
And what happened is what the locals in our guide refer to as Shenzhen speed. But, I kind of have to push back on this concept a little bit.
Oh, how so?
Well, because when I think about a city growing in dog years, like cities like London or Rome took centuries to mature, and Shenzhen is basically a toddler that just sprouted into a giant overnight.
That's a great analogy, the dog years thing.
Thanks, but when I hear about moving that fast, I don't instantly think of a high-tech utopia. I think of catastrophic urban sprawl, gridlock, buildings collapsing because the concrete literally didn't have time to cure.
Right, the quality control issue.
Yeah. So is Shenzhen speed just about pouring concrete incredibly quickly, or does growing that fast fundamentally change the psychology of the people who live there? Doesn't it guarantee some level of chaos?
That is a very valid critique. And honestly, early on, there was absolute chaos.
I can imagine.
The infrastructure was just constantly overwhelmed by the sheer volume of human beings arriving every single day. But what's fascinating here is that Shenzhen speed isn't just a metric of construction.
What is it then?
It's an iterative methodology. Yes, they built things so fast that they sometimes failed or they were deeply flawed. but they also tore them down and rebuilt them just as fast.
Oh, so the speed applied to the corrections too.
Exactly.
It sounds a lot like the agile software development model, but applied to actual physical concrete and steel.
Yeah.
You know, you push the update live, you find the bugs, and you patch it immediately.
That is the perfect way to look at it. And that iterative environment had this really profound psychological filtering effect on the population.
Like it attracted a certain type of person.
Precisely. When you designate a muddy coastal area as an experimental economic zone, you don't attract people who are just looking for a comfortable, predictable life.
Right, you get the risk takers.
You attract the most ambitious, hungry individuals from across a massive country. People who are literally willing to sleep on factory floors just to have a shot at building something from scratch.
So the city itself acted as this massive magnet for a very specific psychological profile. The blank slate demanded builders.
And that self-selecting demographic, that is the real engine of the city. It wasn't just foreign money pouring in. It was millions of young workers and entrepreneurs arriving with a completely different risk tolerance than the rest of the world.
They were willing to fail fast, learn, and try again the next day.
Exactly.
Which brings us perfectly to the most visible result of that culture. Our travel guide highlights a very specific nickname the city has earned: the Silicon Valley of hardware.
It's a very fitting title.
It is, and the guide makes sure to note that this isn't just about assembling like one or two specific devices. The vocabulary list for this city includes robots, electric cars, smartwatches, telecommunications infrastructure, and of course, drones.
Yeah, the comparison to Silicon Valley is useful, but I think it also creates a bit of a blind spot.
How do you mean?
Well, Silicon Valley in California is largely built on software, right? Platforms, code, apps. The friction there is mental. But in Shenzhen, the friction is physical. They're manipulating atoms, not just bits.
Oh, I like that. I kind of look at it this way. If software is the brain of the tech world, hardware is the muscle. And Shenzhen is basically the world's biggest gym.
That's exactly it.
Because in software, you know, if you want to test a new piece of code, you compile it, it takes maybe 3 seconds, and you instantly know if it works.
Right, the feedback loop is instant.
But in the hardware world, outside of Shenzhen anyway, compiling your idea means designing a circuit board, finding a factory in Taiwan to print it, sourcing a battery from Korea, waiting 4 weeks for shipping.
And then realizing the casing you 3D printed in your garage doesn't even fit the battery.
Yes, exactly. The iteration cycle is months long.
Yeah.
But in Shenzhen, it seems like they've managed to turn hardware compilation into software compilation.
That is the core mechanism of their dominance. If we connect this to the bigger picture, it all comes down to the density of the supply chain.
Right.
Our source material points to the massive electronics markets, particularly Huakongbei. And we have to be clear, this isn't like walking into a Best Buy.
No, it's way bigger than that.
It is a sprawling, multi-block ecosystem where tens of thousands of vendors are selling literally every conceivable microchip, sensor, screen, and diode on the planet.
The guide describes young innovators literally just walking down the street to source parts for their startups.
It is entirely unique. If you are a young founder with an idea for, say, a new wearable health tracker, you can walk into Huakongbei in the morning, buy the sensors on the first floor, talk to a guy on the third floor who owns a factory on the outskirts of the city who can injection mold the casing.
And by dinner, you have a prototype.
By dinner, you have a physical, working prototype in your hands. The friction of creation has been completely eradicated.
That is just staggering. It completely democratizes hardware manufacturing. You don't need this multi-million-dollar R&D budget from a massive corporation to build a device.
No, you just need a few $100 and a walking tour of this market.
But wait, let me ask you this. With giants like Huawei and Tencent dominating the space there, what is really drawing the young new entrepreneurs today? Is it the presence of those big names or the fact that they can literally build anything in this ecosystem?
It's definitely the ecosystem.
Right.
Because the barrier from idea to physical product is shorter here than anywhere else in the world.
But if everyone has access to the exact same parts and the exact same factories, doesn't that just lead to endless copying? I mean, for a long time, the label made in China was synonymous with cheap knockoffs, right?
You're touching on the concept of Shanzhai, which originally meant counterfeit or copycat goods. And for a decade, that is exactly what happened.
Just a flood of fake products.
Right, the markets were flooded with fake iPhones and cheap imitation electronics. But here is the critical pivot that most of the world completely missed.
What's that?
When you have thousands of people copying each other at breakneck speed, they eventually start making little improvements just to differentiate themselves.
Oh, wow. So the copying was actually like an evolutionary process.
Exactly. The counterfeiters started adding dual SIM card slots before the major brands did. Or they started adding larger batteries, better waterproof casings, specialized cameras.
So they were innovating on top of the copies.
The Shanghai culture essentially became this massive, decentralized, open-source R&D lab. The copying evolved into hyper-innovation.
It's literally like GitHub, but for physical circuit boards. In software, we celebrate when someone takes an open source project, forks it, and builds something better. Shenzhen just applied that exact same open source mentality to hardware.
That's a brilliant comparison.
Yeah.
And that ecosystem birthed the titans that dominate the space today. The guide spotlights Huawei, which is a global leader in telecommunications. It highlights Tencent, the creator of WeChat.
And the guide refers to WeChat as just the most popular app in China, but that almost undersells it, doesn't it?
Oh, it completely undersells it.
It's the digital infrastructure of daily life there. It's how you pay for groceries, hail a cab, message your boss, book a doctor's appointment, everything.
And then you have DJI, which the guide succinctly describes as making flying cameras. They control over 70% of the global consumer drone market.
70%, that's a monopoly.
It's huge. And they didn't start as a massive state-backed enterprise. DJI was started in a dorm room by a student who utilized that exact Huakong-based supply chain to rapidly prototype flight controllers.
So if you are a young innovator today, you aren't moving to Shenzhen just hoping to land a corporate job at DJI or Tencent. You're moving there because the entire city is designed to help you build the next DJI.
Exactly. The infrastructure is practically begging you to start a company. The barrier between a wild idea and a physical product is just so incredibly thin.
And that has to draw a very specific kind of energy to the city, which actually brings us to the human element of all this.
The culture.
Right. We have 15 million people operating at this relentless, iterative pace, surrounded by this massive hardware ecosystem. But, you know, an economy isn't a culture. What actually happens when everyone logs off for the day?
It's a great question.
The language guide includes vocabulary for navigating the local culture, and one of the main tourist attractions it highlights is this place called Window of the World.
Ah, yes. It is a profoundly fascinating cultural artifact.
It's so bizarre. It's a theme park that features miniature, incredibly detailed replicas of global landmarks. You can see the Eiffel Tower, the pyramids of Giza, the Taj Mahal, all within walking distance of each other.
You can see the whole world in one day, as they say.
Yeah, that's what the guide says. Now, as a Western tourist, my initial reaction is to view this as, I don't know, incredibly kitschy. It feels like a Vegas casino version of world travel. Why is this so popular in a city of high-tech innovators? Does it just perfectly symbolize their ambition to contain the whole world in one city?
That's part of it. But to really understand Window of the World, you have to look at when it was built and who it was built for. It opened in the early 1990s.
Okay, so fairly early in the boom.
Right. And at that time, the vast majority of the young factory workers and engineers pouring into Shenzhen to build this megacity, they could not easily get passports or visas to travel abroad.
Oh, wow.
They were literally building the hardware that would connect the world, but they couldn't actually go see it themselves.
That is actually kind of heartbreaking,
Yeah.
but also incredibly poignant. So the city essentially brought the world to them.
Yes. And today, it serves as a potent symbol of Shenzhen's broader ambition. A city is fundamentally defined by its people. The residents of Shenzhen are constantly looking outward.
Right, they're building for the globe.
They're manufacturing the devices that dictate how the entire world communicates. So having a park that literally shrinks the globe and places it in their backyard, it's a physical manifestation of their intent to be at the center of the world.
It completely flips the narrative. They aren't trying to emulate the West. They are shrinking the West down, putting it on display, while they literally build the future next door.
Exactly.
And you mentioned that the city is defined by its people. The guide spends a massive amount of time on the local food scene, which is another bizarre cultural anomaly for a Chinese city.
How so?
Well, usually if you go to a major region in China, the food is deeply tied to the local geography and history, right? Sichuan has its famous spicy peppercorns. Guangdong has delicate dim sum. The north has heavy wheat noodles.
Very distinct regional identities.
Exactly. But the guide explicitly states that Shenzhen's food scene doesn't really have a single local identity. Instead, it offers incredibly authentic dishes from every single region in the country, all sitting side by side.
Which makes perfect sense when you look at the demographic math we discussed earlier.
The 38,000 to 15 million thing.
Right. If a city grows that fast, essentially 0% of the adult population is actually from there.
It is a city of 100% immigrants, internal immigrants from within China, but immigrants nonetheless.
And if we connect this to the bigger picture, Shenzhen's diversity is its hidden superpower.
Yeah.
Think about it. When a software engineer moves down from the freezing northern provinces and a supply chain manager moves from the spicy inland regions, they bring their culture, their language, and their food with them. The food in the theme parks, they're just outward expressions of this diverse imported workforce.
And the guide even mentions that Mandarin is the primary language spoken, which is rare for that southern region where Cantonese normally dominates.
Right, they had to default to the national language just so everyone could understand each other.
That's wild. So when you walk down a street and see a fiery Hunan restaurant right next to a delicate Shanghainese dumpling house, you aren't just looking at culinary options, you are looking at a demographic map of the workforce.
The food is the most tangible proof that the city is a massive melting pot. And that shared experience of being a transplant, it's absolutely vital to the city's success.
How so?
Well, in older established cities, whether that's Beijing, London, or New York, there is an entrenched local establishment. Old families, old money, an established way of doing things.
And if you are an outsider with a crazy new idea, that establishment usually acts as a gatekeeper. They tell you your idea won't work because it's just not how things are done.
Exactly. But in Shenzhen, there is no establishment. Everyone left their hometown to take a risk. Everyone is the new kid on the block.
So no one is telling you no.
Right. That creates an environment where wild ideas are not just tolerated, they are expected. The shared cultural identity isn't based on a shared past. It is based entirely on a shared ambition for the future.
Wow. Okay, so what does this all mean for us? We started with a conversational language guide intended to help someone, order a coffee or buy a train ticket, and we've basically decoded the DNA of a modern marvel.
It really is a marvel.
Let's synthesize the 3 pillars of this deep dive. First, we have the catalyst of policy and timing. The 1980 Special Economic Zone created this blank slate, sparking Shenzhen speed.
That relentless, iterative momentum.
Right. A momentum that prioritized rapid building, rapid failing, and rapid fixing, drawing in millions of risk takers.
It was an engineered gold rush. But instead of panning for gold, they were building the infrastructure of the future.
Second, we examine the mechanics of the Silicon Valley of hardware. It's not just a cute nickname. Driven by the open source, iterative culture of those Huakangbei markets, it is an ecosystem where the friction between a digital idea and a physical product has just been eliminated.
It's the place where the world goes to turn concepts into reality in a matter of days. The ultimate gem where the equipment is constantly evolving.
Yes. And finally, the resulting cultural reality. A megacity of 15 million transplants, completely devoid of an entrenched establishment.
A place where global ambition is symbolized by miniature theme parks, and where the incredible diversity of a massive nation is served up every night in its restaurants.
A microcosm built by people who came from everywhere, united only by their drive to build.
That sums it up perfectly.
So to you, listener, the next time you pick up a piece of hardware, whether it's the smartwatch on your wrist tracking your heart rate, or maybe you see a drone hovering in the sky capturing a wide-angle shot, I want you to really think about the literal city of ideas required to make that exist.
It takes an entire ecosystem.
It does. That physical object in your hand wasn't just manufactured. It was iterated upon, debated, and refined by an ecosystem of millions of ambitious transplants working at Shenzhen speed.
It is a physical manifestation of an urban experiment that actually worked.
Which leaves me with one final lingering question to ponder today. We've established that Shenzhen was born from a very specific perfect storm, right? A bold special economic zone policy in 1980, coinciding with China's massive demographic shift, at the exact moment the global tech industry needed a manufacturing hub.
All the stars aligned.
But if that is the recipe, imagine what the definition of a modern city will look like 40 years from now. Will emerging markets in India, Africa, or Latin America be able to replicate this exact Shenzhen speed model to solve their own development challenges?
That's the trillion-dollar question.
Or was the birth of Shenzhen a one-time historical anomaly, a perfect alignment of policy, ambition, and timing that can never, ever be repeated?